You know, whenever you look at a historical monument, there is like this inherent assumption of absolute permanence.
Right, yeah. Like it's just a fact of reality.
Exactly. Like you see a massive bronze statue of a general on a horse or, I don't know, a towering marble obelisk in a city square. And the plaque at the base just tells you a story.
It gives you the dates, the heroic deeds, the definitive narrative.
Yeah. And we walk past these things every day and we sort of internalize them as geology. Like it's solid, it's written in stone.
It is. It's comforting, right? To have our history neatly categorized into the noble heroes on one side and the treacherous villains on the other.
But that comfort is actually a vulnerability. And that's exactly what we're stripping down to the studs today in this deep dive.
Yeah, because when you examine the mechanics of political warfare, especially during a period of, well, existential societal survival, those bronze statues start to look incredibly hollow.
They really do. We are looking at a source text today called The Faces of a Martyr, a tale of the Butlerian Jihad. And I gotta say, this isn't just a recounting of sci-fi events.
Oh, no.
It is this absolute masterclass in how history is rewritten by those in power in real time. And it's a deep, honestly uncomfortable exploration of what actually constitutes a human identity.
Right. It's where sci-fi action just collides head-on with deep political philosophy. But to really get why this matters for you, the listener, you have to grasp the sheer unrelenting terror of the environment we're looking at.
The stakes are incredibly high.
Oh, unimaginably high. The backdrop here is the Butlerian Jihad. And this is not, a political skirmish over borders. It is a galaxy-spanning war of absolute extinction.
Humanity is literally fighting for its right to biologically exist.
Exactly. Against the thinking machines. And these machines are led by a cold, calculating computer evermind known as Omnius.
So the human race is backed into a corner. They are feral. They are desperate.
And in that kind of desperation, the concepts of truth, morality, and identity, they become highly elastic.
Very elastic. So today, we are going to track 3 parallel lives navigating that elasticity. We have a geneticist fleeing a burning planet with a horrific secret.
A legendary war hero watching his best friend's legacy be deliberately destroyed by the very people he died for.
Yeah. And a robot philosopher trying to artificially construct a human soul in a laboratory. It is wild.
He really is. And the first of those lives drops us right into the middle of a war zone. This is on the Tlulaxa homeworld.
It's a scene of just utter chaos, and it serves as a brutal demonstration of what happens when a society is suddenly confronted with an unforgivable truth.
Right. So we open on a character named Riker Van. He is a brilliant genetic scientist for the Tlulaxa.
And the very first thing we see him do is just horrifying. He walks up to a fellow researcher and literally murders him.
Yeah, he slips a slender steel blade through the man's spine.
And the text notes a specific detail, right? He gives the blade an extra twist on the way in.
An extra twist.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he doesn't do this out of passion or revenge. He does it purely because he needs the victim's small escape vessel.
I mean, wow. The cold, mechanical nature of that assassination just tells you everything about Van's psychology before he even speaks.
Exactly. He views the dying man not as a colleague, or even a human being, really, but just as an obstacle occupying the pilot's seat.
He actually tells the twitching body, "I'm sorry, I need this ship more than you do," and just dumps him onto the spaceport pavement.
And keep in mind, he is surrounded by absolute devastation while doing this. The city is burning, artillery is leveling buildings everywhere.
Yeah, the sky is filled with the warships of the League of Nobles, which, for anyone unfamiliar, the League of Nobles is essentially the fragile coalition of free human worlds.
They are the ones actually fighting the jihad against the machines.
So the immediate question you have to ask is, why is the human military blockading and burning down an allied human planet?
Right, because the Tlulaxa were supposedly the premier medical suppliers for the jihad.
They were supposed to be the good guys, medically speaking.
Supposed to be. But the League has just uncovered the mechanical reality of how the Tlulaxa maintained that medical supply chain.
And it is so dark.
It is. The Tlulaxa had grown fabulously wealthy, providing replacement limbs, organs, and biological treatments for wounded League fighters. And they claimed this was all done through advanced synthetic cellular growth.
Like growing organs in a lab.
Exactly. But the horrific truth is that they were running vast industrial organ farms.
Organ farms.
Oh.
Just the phrase is chilling.
They were taking missing human soldiers and capturing Zinsuni slaves who were essentially wandering religious pacifists with no military protection and systematically butchering them.
Oh, man. They were harvesting healthy people to patch up injured soldiers. It is literal industrial cannibalization.
Imagine the cognitive dissonance required to run an operation like that.
I can't even. You're kidnapping the most vulnerable elements of your own species, tearing them apart on assembly lines, and shipping their organs to the front lines for profit.
And Van's reaction to this discovery being made public is just chilling.
Right, he wipes the blood of his murdered colleague on his clothes. His hands are sticky.
And his internal monologue reveals he doesn't view the blood as a tragedy. He views it as currency.
Wait, currency?
Yeah, he is genuinely annoyed that a valuable genetic resource is pooling on the concrete instead of being harvested.
He possesses this profound clinical detachment. He is completely divorced from the moral horror of the organ farms.
Absolutely. Because in his mind, he is holding the ultimate biological trump card.
Right, the vial.
He has a secret vial of genetic material in his pocket.
Yeah.
It's original cells from Serena Butler, the martyred spiritual leader of the Jihad.
So to Van, this vial is basically a blank check for his survival.
That's exactly how he sees it. As he blasts his stolen ship up through the atmosphere, he looks to the League warships bombarding his city. And he doesn't see righteous Avengers stopping a Holocaust.
No, he sees fanatics. He actually gets on the comms and taunts them. He is dodging artillery fire, weaving through the blockade, and he yells at the human commanders, asking why they aren't using their firepower against the real enemies, the thinking machines.
Because he genuinely believes the League is wasting his time. In his mind, the atrocities that Tlulaxa committed are just a necessary overhead cost compared to the devastation of Omnius.
It's like a highly rationalized sociopathic utilitarianism.
The mechanism of his logic is entirely focused on output. He thinks of the League commanders as short-sighted fools and myopic idealists.
Because he thinks they'll need the organs later.
Exactly. He reasons that in a few years, when thousands of limbless human veterans are rotting in hospitals with nowhere to go for replacement parts, the League will suddenly regret burning down his efficient organ farms.
He believes human emotions like outrage over mass murder are a weakness, and that his practical innovations are indispensable regardless of the raw material required.
So twisted.
It is. Let's break down the mechanism of that kind of rationalization, because I feel like we see echoes of it in our own world.
Oh, absolutely we do.
Think about the structure of a modern dystopian corporate supply chain. Imagine a massive tech conglomerate whose entire profit margin relies on raw materials mined by forced labor in brutal conditions.
Like cobalt mining or something similar.
Exactly. The executives sitting in a boardroom don't see the suffering. They see a spreadsheet where the cost of raw materials allows them to deliver cheap electronics to consumers.
Right. It's just numbers to them.
And when a whistleblower exposes the forced labor, the public is outraged, right? Regulators step in to dismantle the operation.
As they should.
But the CEO of this company, if he was fleeing the jurisdiction with stolen proprietary tech, he wouldn't feel remorse.
No, he'd feel victimized.
Yes. He would look down at the protests from his private jet and think, you hypocrites. You love your cheap smartphones, but you don't have the stomach for the supply chain that makes them possible.
That is a perfect analogy. Van is doing the exact same thing, just with human livers and hearts instead of rare earth metals. He treats human lives purely as a logistical input.
But the danger of that logistical mindset is that it completely mirrors the enemy they're supposedly fighting.
Yes, the thinking machines.
And that leads to the supreme irony of Van's escape. Because where does a human go when he is actively fleeing the collective justice of the human race?
He leaves the boundaries of League space entirely. He carries his secret cloning technology in Serena Butler's cells, and he heads directly toward the synchronized worlds.
He intends to bargain with Omnius. He is fleeing human justice to find sanctuary with literal genocidal machines.
Because he believes his intellect elevates him above the concept of a species war.
It's pure arrogance. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second and stress test Van's utilitarian argument.
Okay, let's do it.
They are in a war of extinction. If humanity loses, every single human being dies. So in that context, do the organ farms, as abhorrent as they are, provide a net strategic benefit? Are the League commanders actually being short-sighted by destroying their only source of medical supplies?
Well, from a purely mathematical, localized standpoint, sacrificing thousands to save millions looks like a logical equation.
Right. It's the trolley problem on a planetary scale.
Exactly. But the structural flaw in Van's logic is that it ignores the foundational premise of the Butlerian Jihad. Why is humanity fighting the machines in the first place?
To survive.
Not just biologically survive, though. They are fighting to preserve the human spirit, the capacity for empathy, morality, and self-determination.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If the human race adopts the cold, biological calculus of the Tlulaxa, treating their own people as spare parts, they become functionally indistinguishable from the thinking machines.
They become what they hate.
Precisely. The physical war might continue, but the ideological war is already lost. Van fails to understand that survival is meaningless if the entity that survives is entirely devoid of humanity.
Wow. Yeah, he is basically a biological machine himself at this point. He reduces life to data and physical components.
And while Van is treating flesh as a cheap commodity in space, back on the human capital of Seleucus Secundus, we see the government treating truth as a cheap commodity.
Oh, this part of the source materials is fascinating. We shift our focus to Primarovorian Atreides.
Vorian is a legendary military champion,
Oh.
a man who has lived an incredibly long life due to his unique background.
He's a foundational pillar of the Jihad's armed forces. But right now, we find him standing in the shadows of an ornate archway, and he is entirely paralyzed.
Yeah, he is watching an unruly, screaming mob set fire to an effigy in the streets.
It is a crude mannequin, but it is dressed very specifically in the uniform of the army of the Jihad.
And it represents Vorian's closest friend, the war hero, Xavier Harkonnen.
The mob is euphoric. They are celebrating the death of a man they believe is the ultimate traitor to the human race.
And Vorian is watching this, knowing the absolute objective reality. Xavier Harkonnen is not a traitor.
Not even close.
In fact, Xavier is the man who uncovered the Tlulaxa organ farms we just talked about.
Xavier discovered the slaughter, and more importantly, he discovered who was orchestrating the cover-up.
Right. It was the Grand Patriarch of the Jihad himself, Iblis Jinjo.
The highest religious and political leader.
Jinjo was secretly profiting from the Tlulaxa butchery, trading human lives for political power and wealth.
And when Xavier realized the system was entirely corrupt, he made the ultimate sacrifice.
He took matters into his own hands. He conquered his own ship into Jinjo's, killing them both to excise the rot from the heart of the Jihad.
Xavier saved humanity from its own corrupt leadership. But history is being inverted in real time.
Vorian is watching Jinjo the Butcher, the corrupt politician being hailed by the screaming mob, as a holy martyr.
Meanwhile, Xavier, the actual hero, is being scapegoated as a villain who supposedly collaborated with the Tlulaxa.
The propaganda campaign is so incredibly effective, and the public hatred is so intense, that Xavier's own daughters buckle under the pressure.
That part was heartbreaking. They formally drop the proud Harkonnen name and take their mother's surname, Butler.
They erase his legacy just to survive the social fallout.
So Vorian is summoned to a meeting that lays bare the mechanics of this historical revisionism. He meets with two of the chief architects of the lie.
Camibor Jinjo, the widow of the corrupt patriarch, who is using her husband's manufactured martyrdom for massive political leverage.
And Yorick Thur, the commandant of the Jihad police.
Thur is a fascinating and terrifying character. He operates purely on the mechanics of power.
They bring Vorian into a room and show him a scale model of a new monument, a massive physical shrine to the three martyrs.
It has eternal flames, towering architecture, and three colossal figures.
It features Serena Butler, her murdered baby, and Iblis Jinjo.
They are literally carving the lie into stone. They are building the bronze statues we talked about at the beginning of the show.
And when Vorian objects, demanding they acknowledge the lack of evidence against Xavier, Thur explains the mechanism of the noble lie.
Thur states, "The truth is relative. It must be taken in the context of our larger struggle."
It's so cynical.
It is. But Thur understands a fundamental principle of mass psychology. Large populations facing existential dread do not want complex, nuanced truths.
They require stark, simplified binaries.
Exactly. They need flawless heroes to worship, and they desperately need despicable villains to hate.
And if a natural villain isn't available to explain a tragedy, the state must manufacture one to prevent the population from turning its anxiety inward. It is the mechanical generation of an out-group to unify the in-group.
That's exactly what it is.
You know, look at the mechanism of a social media algorithm today. An algorithm is completely agnostic to truth.
Its only metric of success is engagement, time on site.
Right. It quickly learns that nuanced, balanced information does not trigger a dopamine response.
No, righteousness and anger do.
Exactly. Righteous anger keeps users scrolling furiously. So the algorithm artificially elevates the most polarizing, enraging narratives, hiding the complex reality.
And Yorick Thur is acting as a manual planetary scale algorithm.
Yes. He is boosting the lie that Xavier is a traitor because that lie generates immense social cohesion and fervor for the Holy War.
Because revealing the truth that their highest religious leader was selling them to the Tlulaxa for parts would shatter morale.
It would completely fracture the human alliance.
Thur makes the stakes explicitly clear to Vorian. He acknowledges Vorian's military brilliance, but he issues a veiled, chilling threat.
Oh, it was barely veiled.
True. He implies that if Vorian continues his personal crusade to clear Xavier's name, he will be quietly assassinated for the good of the cause.
He literally tells Vorian, "You only harm our cause if you don't keep your feelings to yourself."
It is an impossible ultimatum. Vorian has the power to destroy the lie, but doing so might trigger a civil war that would allow the machines to wipe out humanity.
So Vorian chooses silence. He chooses the survival of the species over the sanctity of the truth.
Which is a heavy burden.
But let's look at the long-term structural damage of that choice. When you allow a society to base its unifying religion and its government on a scapegoat, aren't you introducing a terminal rot into the foundation?
That's the real danger, isn't it?
Xavier's daughters changing their name to Butler is the ultimate symbol of this. They are erasing the truth to conform to the algorithm.
If humanity survives the jihad, what kind of society are they actually left with?
A society that worships its abusers and reviles its saviors.
That is the tragic core of Vorian's dilemma. By accepting the noble lie, he preserves the immediate structural integrity of the human resistance.
But he sacrifices the moral high ground.
Exactly. The concept of honor, the meaning of the uniform that the mob burned in the street, is completely hollowed out.
Truth is no longer an objective anchor. It is a fluid tool manipulated by bureaucrats.
Vorian realizes that the mob is highly susceptible to manipulation, and that he alone must carry the actual historical record in the isolation of his own mind.
So, on Salusa Secundus, human leaders are discovering that you can manufacture a historical identity through propaganda and monuments.
Right.
And out on the machine world of Corinne, a robot is trying to manufacture a physical identity through VATs and code.
We move to the center of the synchronized worlds, into the domain of Erasmus.
Erasmus, what a character.
He's an independent robot, totally distinct from the cold, logistical hive mind of Omnius.
Where Omnius only cares about efficiency and expansion, Erasmus is obsessed with the abstract.
He wants to understand art, philosophy, and the elusive nature of the biological enemy. He is literally trying to map the human soul.
But his laboratory is an absolute house of horrors. I mean, it's designed with the meticulous curiosity of a scientist, but it's gruesome.
You have humans strapped to tables, transparent fluid tanks, people undergoing agonizing sensory tests.
But what makes it so surreal are the philosophical signs he has mounted on the walls. He surrounds his torture with these, thoughtful aphorisms.
One reads, "Understanding human nature is the most difficult of all mental exercises."
Another states, "Flesh is just soft metal."
And he is utilizing a substance called flow metal for his own body. It's a programmable liquid metal that allows him to mimic human facial expressions and gestures.
He is trying to wear the aesthetic of humanity to understand its core. It's so creepy.
It is, and into this grotesque environment walks Ricoeur Van, our fleeing geneticist.
Right, he made it to the machines.
Van presents Erasmus with his bargaining chip, the stolen vial of Sarita Butler's cells.
And he offers to use his Tlulaxa expertise to grow a perfect, accelerated clone of the martyred human leader.
Erasmus is ecstatic, because years prior, he actually held the original Serena captive.
She was his ultimate subject.
She was the most fascinating puzzle he had ever encountered. They engaged in intense, fiery debates. She defied him at every turn.
But that intellectual experiment ended abruptly when Erasmus murdered her child, which was the spark that ignited the entire jihad.
So he views this clone as a chance to resume his studies, to finally crack the code of her unique defiance.
So Van sets to work, and the text explores the highly technical mechanics of this process. And it isn't just about growing a body in a tank.
No, the real challenge is the mind.
Van uses advanced cellular deceleration chambers to rapidly age the physical form, But he has to simultaneously age the brain.
He employs virtual reality instructional loops to artificially implant language, motor skills, and an entire manufactured history into the clone's neural pathways.
He is basically trying to force-feed a lifetime of experience into an accelerated timeline.
And here's where the mechanical approach to consciousness completely breaks down.
The day finally arrives. The clone is extracted from the deceleration tank. She stands before Erasmus, naked, dripping with bat fluids.
And the very first words out of her mouth are, "Do I please you now? I want you to like me."
Oh my God, the disappointment.
The flow metal on Erasmus's face immediately forms an artificial scowl.
Because this reaction is the absolute antithesis of the original Serena Butler.
Erasmus's memory of Serena is defined by her haughty independence, her brilliant intellect, and her unyielding hatred of him.
She never sought his approval. She constantly looked for ways to undermine and attack his logic.
So Erasmus turns to Van, furious, demanding to know what he did to the neural programming.
And Van's defense reveals a staggering level of misogyny and a total ignorance of human complexity.
Van explains that because of the rapid acceleration, he had to guide her personality. So he shaped her with what he calls standard female attitudes.
Standard female attitudes. I mean, come on.
He used a generic subservient template. And Erasmus, a literal machine, notes to himself that this biological man seems to understand human women even less than a robot does.
That is such a burn, but it highlights the profound irony of their respective worldviews.
It really does. Riker Van believes that identity is entirely contained within the sequence of DNA.
He thinks that if you replicate the biological hardware, you automatically recreate the person.
But Erasmus, despite being made of circuits and flow metal, understands that the physical body is merely a canvas.
He recognizes that a true human identity, the soul, if you want to call it, that is forged in the crucible of lived experience.
It is created by friction, by suffering, by the choices made when faced with impossible odds.
Let's look at the mechanism of why Van's programming failed, because I think it is incredibly similar to the way we train large language models and AI chatbots today.
Oh, that's a really interesting connection.
You can feed an AI millions of words written by a specific author, right?
Sure.
The predictive text engine analyzes the statistical probability of the next word based on that massive data set. It can spit out a paragraph that perfectly mimics the author's vocabulary and sentence structure.
It looks identical on paper.
Exactly. But the chatbot has never experienced the friction of arriving at the thought.
It hasn't felt the grief, the joy, or the sudden moment of inspiration that compelled the human author to write those words.
Right. It is predicting the shape of the thought without possessing the capacity to actually think it.
Erasmus himself even compares the clone to a forged painting.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he says you might replicate the exact chemical composition of the paint and the precise brushstrokes, but the forgery completely lacks the emotional weight of the original artist's hand.
That mechanical replication of thought without the underlying emotional catalyst is exactly what Erasmus detests in the clone.
So he tests her further. He demands she engage him in philosophical debate.
He asks her to defend the rights of captive humans, or to argue whether machines can possess a soul.
And her response is utterly vacuous. She simply asks him to tell her what he wants her to say so she can please him.
The spark is just missing. The rebellion that launched 1,000 fleets is nowhere to be found in this vat-grown replica.
Erasmus is so profoundly disgusted by the failure of the experiment that he doesn't even hesitate.
Yeah, in a blur of motion, he strikes her with his flow metal arm and decapitates her instantly.
He disposes of the physical flesh because without the lived experience, the flesh is completely worthless to him.
It's a brutal, sudden termination. But it triggers a terrifying shift in Erasmus's scientific focus.
Van is panicking, obviously. He is babbling excuses, claiming the genetic match is flawless, insisting they just need to tweak the virtual reality algorithms for the next batch.
He is entirely fixated on the mechanical parameters of the failure.
But Erasmus is no longer looking at the dead clone. He is looking at Van.
He remembers another one of his philosophical signs, right?
Yes. Is it more human to be good or evil?
And he stares at this cowardly, self-serving geneticist, a man who views his own species as spare parts and treats identity as a programmable script.
Erasmus realizes that Van possesses absolutely none of the noble, self-sacrificing attributes that he finds so fascinating in other humans.
So Erasmus experiences a revelation. He smiles a chilling manipulation of his flow metal features and tells Van that he can learn a great deal from him.
He realizes that Van's complete lack of empathy makes him a perfect, pristine specimen for studying the darkest, most predatory aspects of human nature.
Erasmus summons his sentinel robots to seize the screaming scientist. He calmly states that he has several very interesting, highly invasive new experiments in mind. It is dark poetic justice.
Very dark.
The man who treated humans as lab rats becomes the ultimate lab rat. But I want to throw this back to you, looking at the contrast between these two figures.
Okay.
On one side, you have Ricoeur Van, a biological human who reduces life to currency and views empathy as a structural flaw.
Right.
On the other side, you have Erasmus, a machine who commits horrific violence, but who is desperately searching for the meaning of the soul, who is moved by art, and who values the irreplaceable nature of lived experience.
It's a stark contrast.
So mechanically speaking, isn't the robot exhibiting far more humanity than the geneticist?
No, in terms of possessing a philosophical inner life, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Erasmus is engaged in a profound search for meaning, while Van has completely abandoned meaning in favor of mechanical efficiency.
He's just surviving.
Exactly. Erasmus learns that you cannot synthesize the spirit of sacrifice. You cannot mass-produce defiance.
And that realization connects directly back to the human side of the war.
It does. Because while Erasmus is dissecting the nature of sacrifice in a lab, Vorian Atreides is carrying the crushing reality of those sacrifices onto the battlefield.
So we return to Vorian, and the physical shift in his circumstances is dramatic.
We left him years ago, standing paralyzed in the shadows of Seleucus Secundus, feeling utterly powerless against the hurricane of political propaganda.
But now we find him sitting stiffly on the command bridge of his flagship.
He is leading a massive assault force comprised of hardened jihad soldiers and elite Genaz mercenaries deep into the heart of synchronized space.
He has channeled his powerlessness into absolute military focus.
And the text provides a deep dive into his internal monologue here. Over the intervening years, Vorian has slowly processed the massive trauma of the noble lie.
He reflects on the dual tragedies of his closest friends.
And he arrives at a profound, complex understanding of their choices. He realizes that neither Serena nor Xavier were victims of circumstance.
They both knew exactly what they were doing.
The mechanism of their sacrifices was entirely intentional.
Serena actively chose to walk into Omnius's domain, knowing she would be martyred.
Because she understood that her death would ignite the human race into action. She begged Vorian and Xavier to understand her choice.
And Xavier made a highly conscious, excruciating decision to destroy his own honor.
He knew that kamikazing Jinzhou's ship would look like treason, but he did it anyway to stop the organ farms without destroying the political stability of the jihad.
They intentionally surrendered their personal narratives, their very identities in the historical record, just to secure a future for humanity.
Vorian thinks to himself, I cannot dispute the decisions of my friends.
This is his breakthrough.
It is. He finally understands the nature of his own role in this triad. He realizes that his ultimate sacrifice isn't going to be a glorious death on the battlefield.
No, his sacrifice is the agonizing burden of survival.
He must resist the desperate urge to shout the truth and clear Xavier's name.
He must allow the untruths to stand, acting as the silent, invisible guardian of their actual legacy.
The text notes that he must bear an unseen banner of honor for all three of them.
Let's look at the mechanics of load-bearing structures for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
Think about a massive, towering skyscraper. That skyscraper represents the survival of the human race, the ongoing jihad.
Right.
For that building to stand, it requires a massive concrete foundation pillar, and Vorian Atreides is that pillar.
He is holding up the immense, crushing weight of the entire structure.
But he is buried 100 feet underground. He will never be seen by the people living in the building. He will never be celebrated or acknowledged for the weight he bears.
And the hardest part is, Vorian knows that the concrete directly above him is mixed with the sand of lies.
The false history of Jinzhou and Xavier.
But if he moves, if he shifts his position to show himself and tell the truth, the structural integrity fails, and the whole building collapses.
It is a devastatingly accurate metaphor.
Right.
And we see the psychological toll that bearing this weight has taken on him as the fleet approaches its target.
They drop out of space near an unremarkable planet controlled by the machines.
And the machine warships defending the planet are described as angular, weirdly beautiful, and deadly efficient.
As the robotic projectiles begin raining down on the human fleet, Vorian remains perfectly calm.
He orders the Holtzman shields engaged.
Now, a Holtzman shield is a defensive energy field that fundamentally alters the physics of combat in this universe.
It deflects objects moving at high velocities like artillery shells or lasers, but allows slow-moving objects to pass through.
Right, so it forces combat into brutal, close-quarters engagements.
As the shields flare up, Vurian rises from his command chair, smiles confidently at his officers, and yells, "Forward! We have enemies to destroy."
It looks like a moment of pure, heroic resolve, but the internal reality is much darker.
The text reveals that Vorian has learned to accept almost any cost in blood as long as it mathematically contributes to a victory against the machines.
He looks at the target planet and thinks to himself that he will leave it a blackened blister if necessary.
He knows there are unfortunate human slaves trapped on the surface, serving the machines, but he is willing to incinerate them all to achieve his objective. This is where we really have to look closely at the cost of the noble lie on Vorian's soul.
Yeah, he has found his resolve to fight, yes. He is executing the will of his martyred friends.
But by accepting the necessity of the lie, and by accepting that he must turn planets into blackened blisters, sacrificing innocent human collateral damage to destroy the machines, hasn't Vorian sacrificed a crucial piece of his own humanity?
It really seems that way.
He is adopting the very same cold calculus, the same output-driven utilitarianism that we condemned in Riker Van and the Tlulaxa.
And that is the ultimate tragedy of Vorian's character arc. Xavier sacrificed his historical honor. Sarita sacrificed her physical life.
And Vorian is sacrificing his conscience.
He is fighting a war to save the human soul, but his methods are becoming increasingly mechanical and profane.
He is doing it out of a desperate need to ensure his friends' sacrifices weren't in vain. But he is slowly whittling away at his own morality to achieve it. So when we pull all of these intricate threads together, the geneticists treating blood as currency, the politicians treating truth as a tool, the robot trying to manufacture a soul, and the war hero burying his conscience under the weight of history.
It's a lot to untangle.
It is. What does this text actually reveal about the mechanics of truth and identity?
It systematically dismantles the assumptions we rely on to make sense of the world. Let's synthesize the core mechanisms at play here.
Let's do it.
First, Riker Van proves that the biological mechanics of a human being, flesh, blood, and DNA, do not generate humanity.
You can possess a human heartbeat and still operate with the precise sociopathic logic of a machine.
Exactly. Second, the mob on Seleucus Secundus and the architects of the Three Martyrs Monument demonstrate the mechanism of historical illusion.
They prove that massive societal unity and righteous anger are not indicators of truth.
History is highly malleable. The foundational narratives we accept as solid stone are frequently just curated fictions, engineered by algorithms of power, designed to manipulate our anxiety and maintain social control.
Third, Erasmus's failure in the cloning lab proves that consciousness is not a data set.
You cannot simply download a personality.
Identity is the cumulative result of lived friction. The environments we survive, the pain we endure, and the choices we make under pressure.
The soul cannot be mechanically replicated because it requires the chaotic variable of authentic experience.
And finally, Vorian Atreides demonstrates the terrible mechanics of survival.
In the grand sweep of history, dying for a cause is often the simpler choice.
The heaviest, most crushing burden of war is surviving, and being forced to silently carry the weight of a truth that the rest of society is desperately, violently trying to forget.
It is a phenomenal, layered exploration of these themes, offering no easy answers, but demanding rigorous critical thought.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pull you, the listener, directly into the center of this thought experiment.
Because it applies to us today.
Exactly. Let's circle back to where we started, looking at those historical monuments, the bronze statues that define our reality.
Think about the history you were taught in school.
Think about the unifying narratives you consume every day through your screens, in your politics, in your cultural identity.
Consider the mechanics of how those narratives reached you.
How many Three Martyrs monuments are currently shaping our geopolitical world? How much of the solid ground you walk on is actually built on a highly curated, noble lie designed to bind you to an in-group?
It's a staggering thing to consider.
And here is the hardest question. If you somehow slipped behind the curtain and discovered that the unifying, comforting story of your entire society was a manufactured fiction, what would you actually do?
Would you be the one to shout the truth into the hurricane, knowing it might tear your world apart?
Or would you, like Vorian Atreides, decide that the illusion is necessary and silently carry the crushing burden of the lie for the greater good?
That is the choice at the center of history.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into your sources. We hope we've helped you unpack the complex mechanics behind these ideas.
Because as we always say, the most important knowledge isn't just knowing what happened.
It is understanding the hidden mechanisms of why it matters. Until next time.